Well, hello there everybody, and welcome back to Steven's Fight Show. Yeah, I don't know why I started the video like that. But anyways, welcome back to Steven's Fight Show, and in this video we're going to be discussing about this week's upcoming UFC fight night, which is Ciryl Gane versus Tai Tuivasa. This is a very fun fight in my opinion because it's two completely different fighters that has two completely different careers and fighting styles. We have Ciryl Gane, who quickly rose to the top of the heavyweight division in the UFC with his impressive performances against several different contenders, and on the other hand we have Tai Tuivasa, who at one point people weren't even taking him as a serious contender in the heavyweight division, and fast forward till now, Tai is legitimately contending for a title shot. And not only that, the way they both fight is completely different. One person loves to dance and another person lives in the fire. When we have a fight between two men like that, it's always intriguing to see who eventually has their way. And I'll explain little details on why they are different fighters and how they can create such a great fight. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. Alright, so let's speak a little bit about the background and everything that we know so far between these two fighters. Obviously, like I just mentioned, Ciryl Gane is one of the best heavyweights in the UFC right now. Ciryl had a fantastic start to his MMA career prior to the UFC, and when he arrived to the UFC, he quickly made his mark in the heavyweight division. He had good performances against top guys at the time like Alexander Volkov, Derrick Lewis, and Rozenstruik. These performances were absolutely spectacular, where he showed off his movement, striking, IQ, and much more. And as Ciryl continued to put on great performances, he was able to land a title shot against his old training partner Francis Ngannou, in which he came up very close to winning the title, but unfortunately he came up short. And despite Ciryl Gane losing his last title fight, he showed that he belonged in there against Francis, and he forced Francis to step outside of his comfort zone to beat him. Francis Ngannou had to resort to using his wrestling to beat Ciryl Gane, which was something that we had never seen before. Legit, there was memes on Twitter saying Francis Nurmagomedov, because no one was even expecting Francis to even score more than one takedown. And before Francis was starting to have his way with the grappling, Ciryl was winning those early rounds against Francis. He was keeping his distance against Francis, he was not allowing Francis to close down the range, and as he was moving, he kept changing his angles, throwing different strikes, giving Francis different looks, using his kicks, his punches, his jab to keep Francis at bay and to avoid any potential threat. And to me, that shows that Ciryl has the skills to compete with anybody in the heavyweight division, despite only starting MMA a few years ago. A lot of people don't know this, but Ciryl only started MMA when he was like 27. I'm pretty sure he's around 30 or something right now. But however, the fight essentially exposed a big weakness in Ciryl's game, which was the grappling. And it was something that we have not seen Ciryl do a ton of in his fights. And in that fight against Francis, we got a lot of answers about Ciryl. And I remember in a post-fight interview, I believe he was on Ariel Helwani's podcast, where he was talking about how after round 3 or round 4, when the round ended and he looked at Ciryl, he saw himself when he fought Stipe. Essentially what he was saying was that he felt like he broke Ciryl before the final bell. And if you watch the fight back, I don't think it's wrong for him to really say that. I felt like Ciryl was caught so off guard that he didn't really know how to react. We saw after 2 rounds of grappling against Francis, Ciryl Gane was already starting to fade mentally. And on the other hand, Tai Tuivasa had a rocky start to the UFC. He wasn't the best technical fighter, and he was also getting finished as well. Prior to his 5-fight win streak that he's currently on right now, he was getting finished 3 times before that. However, these past couple of fights, we've seen Tai slowly modify his style, where he's coming forward, but he's doing it in a calculated way. He's making sure that he's not attacking recklessly. If he wants to enter in range, he's gonna throw a jab, he's gonna throw a leg kick. But essentially, the type of fighter that Tai is that he is somebody who's willing to fight whenever things get hot. Essentially, he's a brawler. He's the fighter that comes to fight and puts it on you when the lights shine the brightest. Like if you were to take this man and you would put him in a bar every single weekend, I guarantee you he's going undefeated. That's the type of fighter that he is. And he has knocked out his last 5 opponents, showing that he is a real threat when he comes forward with that pressure. When he's able to walk guys down and close that distance and start letting his hands go, mixing in his punches, his elbows, his knees, his clinch fighting. Eventually, it starts to have an effect on his opponents. So let's transition into the style matchup. Like I said again, the way both of these guys fight is completely different. Even though Tai Tuivasa is a great fighter with great skills, stylistically I believe Ciryl Gane is a bad matchup for Tai, and I'll explain why. So Tai Tuivasa's last fight was against Derrick Lewis, and in his last fight it was an absolute scrap. Fans were really excited for this fight because both Tai Tuivasa and Derrick Lewis loves to come forward. So based off of that, fans were expecting a crazy fight and a crazy finish. And ultimately, that's what it was. Both guys were coming forward, throwing bombs, but as the fight went on, it was Tai who was getting the better of the exchanges, and eventually he finished Derrick in a devastating way. And although Tai and Derrick are different fighters, they're similar in many ways in the way they fight, in my opinion. And Ciryl Gane, he also fought Derrick Lewis as well. And although it wasn't as exciting as when Tai Tuivasa fought Derrick Lewis, it was an absolute masterclass by Ciryl. He rarely got hit in the fight, and he never allowed Derrick Lewis to exchange with him. That whole fight, he was on the outside, changing up his attacks, attacking the legs, which was a big part in that fight. He was using the jab, landing straight shots, using his long teep and roundhouse kicks to the body. And Derrick had very few moments where he was able to get a hold of Ciryl. And I understand MMA math is not always accurate, but in this case, it could be, because if the fight ends in a decision, I don't see more than one path to victory for Tai. If we compare both these guys skill for skill, in my opinion, I don't think Tai Tuivasa even belongs in the same convo as Ciryl. But everything else that Tai presents in a fight still gives him somewhat of a chance to win this fight. If Ciryl starts to move and utilize his reach to keep his advantage and throw strikes to keep Tai at bay, which is what he usually does, I believe as the fight goes on, he will frustrate him and potentially finish him. And that's what happened in the Ciryl Gane versus Derrick Lewis fight. Derrick Lewis was extremely frustrated that Ciryl Gane wasn't in front of him. Tai needs to not be too on board with the idea of being technical. Instead, he needs to make it a scrap against Ciryl, which is what he's good at. He has to make sure that he attacks the body and he tries to kick the legs of Ciryl to slow down his movement. Hopefully Tai can also cut off the cage and cut off Cyryl's angles whenever he's moving side to side, and trap him up against the fence to land some clinch strikes and wear him down. These are all the things that Tai did well against Derrick. And when he closes the range down on Ciryl, he needs to make sure he follows up with another 1 or 2 strikes to stop Ciryl from exiting, which is something he's really good at. Cyryl's good at maintaining distance going backwards, and when he's near the fence, he's good at exiting and pivoting out the way. Tai has to make sure that Ciryl can't comfortably make an angle and pivot out of harm's way. The clinching up against the fence is very important in my opinion as well. In Cyryl's fight against Francis Ngannou, even though Ciryl is praised for his cardio as a heavyweight and his movement, since we've never seen him grapple a ton in his fights, he started to slow down in the later rounds. People don't really understand this, but grappling fatigue and striking fatigue are two different things. It's not the same type of fatigue when you engage in the grappling realm as opposed to the striking. But then again, demanding Tai Tuivasa to do all of this in this fight is a tough task for Tai because he has not gone the distance in the UFC, whereas Ciryl does. One thing about Ciryl is that he needs to make sure that he cannot be lazy against Tai. What I mean is that he can't have too many moments where he's switched off, where he's not moving as quickly on his feet, and he's not aware of what Tai is bringing to him. Then he could get caught, and instantly the fight is all of a sudden swayed in Tai's way. Tai only needs that one moment to erase any mistake that he's made prior, whereas Ciryl has to stay alert at all times. But at the same time, I don't really see it as a big possibility. Ciryl has fought a lot of fighters who can throw a mean punch, like Derrick Lewis and Francis Ngannou. I don't really expect Ciryl to step his foot off the gas and give Tai too many openings where he could change the fight. So with that being said, my official prediction is that Ciryl will get this done by decision and doing what he normally does, which is being technical. He's going to get it done in the quote-unquote boring way, and I think Cyryl's patience will serve him well in this fight. He perfectly displayed it against Derrick Lewis, where everything he was doing was not rushed or forced, but instead it was to set up the finish. Everything he's doing looks like he's flowing. I don't think Tai has a chance to win by decision because it's just hard for me to picture him taking 3 rounds against Ciryl, especially if he hasn't even gone past 2 rounds. Experience is everything in fighting, and if you don't have the feeling of breathing heavy and digging deep in those later rounds, then there is a good chance that you are going to fold when you encounter it. If Tai wants a realistic shot at winning this fight, I believe he can't be doing a lot of moving back in this fight. I believe every second that Tai goes backwards is a second that he's losing the fight. Tai has to make sure that he stays just outside the pocket, because if he moves too far back, then he has to work a lot harder to close that distance down again. And you already know, if the distance is too far between him and Ciryl is going to continue to maintain it until Tai makes a move again. And he doesn't want to do that because he needs to conserve his energy to potentially go 5 rounds. So for him, I think it would be best if he can just circle around and stay around his striking range instead of backing off too far and playing into Ciryl's game. And that is it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to what I have to say. Who do you have winning tomorrow, Ciryl Gane or Tai Tuivasa? Do you believe Ciryl Gane can land another title shot if he beats Tai Tuivasa? Drop a comment and let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if you guys enjoy content that is related to combat sports, please drop a like on this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would be greatly appreciated. And other than that, it's been Steven, signing out. Peace.